The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of this network, their group, or other organization they may be involved with.
I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of Tuesday evening news. Tuesday evening
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychedelic Reporters this Tuesday. What is today? Like
The 10th.
7th? The 10th, here on episode 161 here on NOK Network, the video news podcast where stone puppet folk and humans focused on psychedelic medicine being reported in mainstream media. Shout out to the guys in Dead Ringer from Kirkland Lake, Ontario for this awesome intro track, originally recorded by the Movie Boots with some customized changes for our show. I am joined by my amazing joint host, Tara Simpson, along with the one and only Bufal Various, who has chosen all of our stories for us. Hello, Tara.
Well, hello, hobbies, and hello, everyone. I'd like to take a minute to introduce Bufo. He's our Sonoran desert toad, or Colorado mud toad. Did you know he emits DMT from his skin? And well, that sounds like fun. Park rangers would like to remind everyone, please don't lick that toad.
Do not lick that toad.
I wouldn't advise it.
No. And I like how you say it, too, because the way you said it made me like, oh, no, I shouldn't lick the toad, because Tara told me.
Yeah. Again, sustainable harvesting, accurate dosing, very important aspects of toad licking. And you can't do that when you lick a toad. Just say.
Right. So the interesting for our first article comes out of technologynetworks.com. And they state consensus reached on the impact of psychosocial factors on psychedelic trials. And consensus on how mindset and the surroundings shape the therapy outcomes is a step forward toward regularity approval for psychedelics. And this is an original story from McGill University. And if I remember correctly, we kind of covered something last week on that kind of made us question all this.
Yeah, we did. So this is an interesting article. As psychedelics gain traction as potential treatments for mental health disorders, an international study led by researchers at McGill University, Imperial College London, and the University of Exeter stands to improve the rigor and reliability of clinical research. Up to now, psychedelic clinical trials have had what has been widely acknowledged as a critical flaw of failure to properly account for how a person's mindset and surroundings influence the effects of psychedelics such as MDMA and psilocybin. The gap has led to inconsistent study results, making regulatory approval more difficult. To address this, the researchers conducted a Delphi consensus study, bringing together 89 experts from 17 countries for a multi-round debate. The result is the reporting of setting in psychedelic clinical trials, or as they put, respect guidelines published in Nature Medicine, a 30-item checklist representing the first global agreement on which psychosocial factors have the greatest impact on a psychedelic experience. For decades, we've known that psychedelics don't work in isolation. The person's mindset, the therapy room, and even the music playing all influence outcome, said co-lead author Chloe Pronovost Morgan, a researcher at McGill University and Imperial College London. 2 trials using the same psychedelic drug at the same dose can produce completely different results depending on the environment. This approach changes the way psychoactive drugs are typically studied, where scientists try to control or eliminate outside variables to isolate a drug's effect. These guidelines recognize that context is crucial and should be studied directly. Well, I think too, what the person is dealing with or has been through also plays a huge factor in their experience because it's personal, right?
Oh yeah, I agree. The guidelines, and this is cool. Why guidelines matter? By offering a standard framework for evaluating and reporting these variables, the guidelines aim to make trial outcomes more consistent and more comparable across studies. Leor Roseman from the University of Exeter is a co-senior author and has said having clear guidelines for contextual considerations is essential to understand the effects of psychedelics and how they work differently from our psychiatric medications. Our guidelines will also help in replicating results and understanding the true therapeutic potential of psychedelics. The lack of standards has had consequences beyond the research lab. Pronovost Morgan explained the U.S. Food and Drug Administration recently rejected MDMA-assisted therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder, citing inconsistent reporting across trials as a key reason for the decision. There is immense public interest in psychedelic therapies, particularly for individuals suffering from debilitating mental health conditions like PTSD, depression, and anxiety, which have not responded to existing treatments, said co-senior author Kyle Greenway, assistant professor in McGill's Division of Social and Transcultural Psychiatry, and a researcher at the Lady Davis Institute for Medical Research. I need some water. You want to finish that?
Sure. Where did we leave off here?
Our guidelines.
Our guidelines offer a new gold standard for psychedelic research, helping bring these treatments to those who need them most. The research team is organizing a 3-day workshop in October, funded by McGill's Healthy Brains, Healthy Lives Initiative, where leading experts in psychedelics and neuroscience will discuss how the guidelines can be integrated into research and clinical practice.
Oh yeah, a good article. And I say this because I remember a time when all these doctors from around the world sat in a room and they said, what is the right potency for THC? And it's almost like now they're starting to have the arguments again as a worldly, which I think is really fucking cool, of all these doctors sitting and talking about all this stuff.
For sure. It's very cool. The more we learn, the better the outcome for people later on, right?
Yep. And it reminds us it's a move in the right direction. And moving on to the right direction brings us to SciPost.org. And SciPost.org, Eric, Dolan writes, psychedelics may buffer against PTSD, finds new study of survivors of Nova Music Festival massacre.
We actually covered this article once before. I don't know if it was written by the same author, but we covered this, I believe.
Wow, and it resurfaced
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is like a newer study on the same study. It's interesting. So, a new study published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology suggests that people who had consumed classic psychedelics before experiencing an extreme traumatic event reported lower levels of anxiety and post-traumatic stress symptoms in the following weeks. The research conducted among survivors of the October 7th, 2023 terrorist attack at the Nova Music Festival in Israel provides a real-world data on how psychedelics may affect the way trauma is encoded in memory. The findings add to a growing body of research on therapeutic potential of psychedelic substances for trauma-related conditions. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition that can occur after someone experiences or witnesses a terrifying event. People with post-traumatic stress disorder may struggle with intrusive memories, emotional numbness, anxiety, and avoidance of reminders of the trauma. While some people recover naturally, others experience symptoms that persist for months or years. On October 7th of 2023, during the early morning hours, militants from Hamas launched a large-scale coordinated attack on Israel. One of their first targets was the Supernova Sukkot Gathering, a psychedelic trance music festival attended by approximately 3,500 people near the Gaza border. The attack began with a barrage of rockets, followed by an onslaught of armed militants who infiltrated the festival grounds. The massacre resulted in the death of 378 individuals, including civilians, security personnel, and festival organizers. Many were shot at close range or killed while hiding. Dozens of attendees were abducted and taken into Gaza, and there were widespread reports of sexual and physical violence. Some survivors were under the influence of mind-altering substances at the time of the attack, including psychedelic drugs commonly used in recreational settings such as psilocybin or LSD. The chaos and horror of the attack, combined with the altered mental states, created an unprecedented context in which to study how substances might shape the formation of traumatic memories.
My long-standing research in trauma, resilience, and mental health led us to explore the intersection between extreme events and altered states of consciousness. And study author Zohar Rubinstein of the School of Psychology at Rickman University. The tragic attack at Nova Music Festival presented a unique and heartbreaking opportunity to examine real world conditions and how the paratraumatic use of psychedelics might affect the development and anxiety and post traumatic symptoms. There was very limited empirical data on human psychology, and during trauma, we felt an urgent need to document and understand these effects to inform both science and clinical practice. The researchers began collecting data from October 22nd to 28th, 2023, roughly 3 weeks after the attack. During the acute phase of the trauma response, they approached survivors who stayed in a temporarily healing space designed to provide psychological support. A total of 343 adults, 189 women, and 154 men agreed to participate, with ages running from 18 to 64. Participants completed anonymous surveys and asked about their drug use before and during the festival, as well as the current uh, psychological symptoms. The researchers asked participants whether they consumed any of 18 mind-altering substances, including classic psychedelics such as mushrooms, LSD, mescaline, and as well as MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy. Participants also completed two standardized questionnaires, one measuring symptoms of anxiety and another measuring symptoms of acute stress disorder, a condition that can develop after trauma and is often a precursor to PTSD. Participants were divided into three groups: those who consumed classic psychedelics and those who consumed MDMA, and those who had not consumed any psychedelic substances. The researcher also accounted for whether people could additional recreational substances like alcohol or cannabis. Wow.
Yeah, the researchers found that survivors who were under the influence of classical psychedelics at the time of the attack reported significantly lower levels of anxiety 3 weeks later compared to those who had taken MDMA or no psychedelics at all. The average anxiety rating in the classic psychedelic group corresponded to symptoms being present several days over the past 2 weeks, while the other group reported symptoms occurring more than half the days. This effect remained even after accounting for the participants' age, gender, past psychiatric diagnosis, and whether they had used psychedelics in the previous year. In contrast, there was no significant difference in anxiety levels between the MDMA group and the group that had not consumed psychedelics. When it came to post-traumatic symptoms, the picture was more nuanced. Overall, the groups did not differ significantly, but when the researchers looked at people who had not consumed additional substances like alcohol or cannabis, they found that those in the classic psychedelic group again reported lower levels of trauma symptoms. This protective effect was not observed in the MDMA or no psychedelic groups. These findings suggest that classical psychedelics may have a unique influence on how traumatic memories are encoded in the brain. Specifically, they appear to blunt the emotional intensity or durability of the trauma memory when consumed just before or during the event. However, this effect seems to be weakened or lost when the psychedelics are taken alongside other substances. Survivors who consumed classic psychedelics such as psilocybin, LSD, mescaline, or 2CB reported significantly lower levels of anxiety and post-traumatic stress symptoms 3 weeks after the attack compared to those who did not use psychedelics or who used other substances like MDMA, cannabis, or alcohol, Rubenstein told Psych Post. This effect remains strong even after controlling for age, gender, psychiatric history, and previous psychedelic use. We were surprised by the magnitude and consistency of the effect. Classic psychedelics, but not MDMA, were associated with reduced anxiety and post-traumatic symptoms, especially among those who did not consume additional substances like cannabis or alcohol. We expected some protective effect based on prior animal studies, but seeing it so clearly in real-life mass trauma was unexpected.
However, these results do not mean psychedelics are recommended or safe treatment for trauma outside control settings. Psychedelic use still carries psychological and legal risks and should not be undertaken without proper supervision and research guidance. But why might psychedelics be protective? As possible explanation and emotional processing by altering the way and sensory and emotional information is processed during trauma, these substances may reduce the severity of later psychological responses. In contrast, MDMA has a different pharmacological profile affecting not only serotonin but also dopamine and norepinephrine While MDMA is known its prosocial and euphoric effects, it may not engage the same neural systems involved in memory, ending in the same that classic psychedelics do. Researchers are also considered the use of other substances like cannabis, alcohol may interfere with potential of the benefits of psychedelics. These substances can impair memory and emotional regulation, possibly counteracting the protective effects of psychedelics. Despite the compelling findings, the authors acknowledged several limitations. First, the study relied entirely on self reported data. There were no measures of psychological symptoms or drug concentrations. The specific dosages and purity of the substances consumed were also unknown. The only indicate strong association in the particular substance, Rubinstein said. Second, since psychedelics are illegal in Israel, participants may have underreported their use, potentially skewing the results. There may have been selection bias, and individuals who had more traumatic or negative experience might have chosen not to participate in the study. Third, the study looked at symptoms 3 weeks after the trauma. It remains unknown whether the effects observed here will be persist or whether new symptoms might emerge over time. Longer follow-up periods are needed to understand how psychedelic use affects the development and prevention of PTSD in the long run. Finally, while the findings suggest a possible protective effect of psychedelics on trauma-related symptoms, the researchers caution against interpreting this as an endorsement for unsupervised use. Psychedelics induce intense, sometimes destabilizing experiences, especially in controlled settings. One of the most overlooked aspects in discussions of psychedelics for trauma is the importance of setting. Rubinstein explains safe and effective therapeutic use of psychedelics generally requires a controlled environment guided by trained professionals, or in some traditions or findings. Oh, wow, where'd I go? Findings. Yeah, the authors hope that research in the future will build on these findings to better understand the brain mechanisms that underlie trauma and resilience. We aim to understand better how psychedelics may affect trauma memory formation, resilience, Rubinstein said. We hope to inform future controlled studies that would clarify mechanisms and potentially lead to safe evidence based interventions for trauma anxiety. Ultimately, we want to bridge the gap between neuroscience, clinical psychology, and real world emergency context. This study offers a rare glimpse into the real world intersection of trauma and psychedelics outside the lab. In the midst of a national tragedy, I am deeply grateful to the survivors who are willing to share the experiences, and I stress that this research should not be interpreted as an endorsement for supervised psychedelic use. More research, dialogue, and clinical caution are necessary as this field continues to evolve. The study paratraumatic consumption of classic psychedelics is associated with lower anxiety and post-traumatic responses 3 weeks after exposure was authored by Enoch Hart, Barnier, Zohar Rubinstein, Rainy Event, Shaw Labran, Leonore, and Mario Nicholas.
That was a great article. Again, we did touch on that, but it was written in a different article. That wasn't the exact same article, but it's interesting that their findings are the same as what the other author from the other article on the exact same incident reported, was that they seem to do better being on the psychedelics post-trauma than those who didn't.
Well, and that being said, it it validates it, just like you're saying, it validates the study because.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting.
So off of rnz.conz, so I believe that's New Zealand, right? So Sonia Gray opens up on being in psychedelic drug trials. The broadcaster never thought she would take the one drug she was most afraid of, but she did in the name of research. And this is written by Hale.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Broadcaster Sonia Gray has been trialing psychedelic drugs as part of clinical studies to help bring some peace from an unwelcome companion that's been by her side since she was a baby, anxiety. No Such Thing as Normal podcast host was on a mission to find out if the drugs could offer better treatment options for New Zealand's worsening mental health crisis as part of a two-part documentary, Mind Menders. I've always been an advocate for mental health causes, and I was kind of at the point where I was like, I don't know what to say to people. What would you do for anxiety, depression, all the things? I was like, I don't know, because I actually haven't been able to fix myself despite decades of trying and many, many medications. Gray proved to be the perfect candidate for the study. An 8-week LSD microdosing trial at the University of Auckland and the University of Otago trial on ketamine, investigating if psychedelics can help people with treatment-resistant mood disorders. I can't believe I'm still talking about this, and I hate talking about this, but I've done all the things, all the therapies, been on all the different medications. Some of them saved my life, but every day it is still hard, really hard, Gray says in the documentary, after getting emotional while looking at her mental health campaign from 25 years ago for the first time. Through filming, she was also able to trace when her mother started noticing symptoms of anxiety at the age of 21 months and recalls wanting to jump off a Ferris wheel in a panic at the age of 5. When you've got a lot of stimulus for a highly sensitive person coming in like that, especially when you're little, you can't process it. And then it's almost like it gets held in your body. What I've learned about that, and actually I think partly that it's a whole experience, this whole experience has helped, is that you can change your thoughts, but your body is still 2 or 7 and it's going to still react that way. Researchers are testing whether psychedelics at the right dose and setting can produce changes in the brain activity, which may help a person's mental state. Gray, who was diagnosed with ADHD in 2017, says she was uncomfortable to recount her mental health struggles on screen and watch the edits, but she was excited to be a part of something that could offer hope to those like her tried to fit in a world not designed for them or had their hopes dashed by therapy that didn't work for them. However, the mental health advocate believes even if we had more therapy options, the alarming statistics will remain the same without a shift in society. I think if we're talking about any sort of therapy like psychedelics or SSRI type antidepressants or anything, how we got to this point where how have we got to the point where we need them? I really do feel that there is a stress, and it's not just about your brain wiring. You know, culturally, we expect people to just fit in or forget about their own culture and gender diversity and all of these things, but you can't see inside someone's brain, and they're carrying the weight of being different, not belonging. That's hardly surprising when we have these terrible statistics.
The future of psychedelic therapy. Gray is all too aware of the desperation of wanting to find an answer, but she is careful not to undermine the risk of the drugs. So she takes on board a range of the views from proponents of psychedelic therapy to
Can't hear you, Hobbies. Can't hear you. Oh, and we lost Hobbies. So let's just start that over. The future of psychedelic therapy. Gray is too aware of the desperation of wanting to find an answer, but she's careful not to undermine the risk of the drugs. So she takes on board a range of views from proponents of psychedelic therapy to academics and Kiwis who have used the drug recreationally. It was a humbling experience because I just didn't know. I thought drugs are bad, but I've never thought why. I'm really curious by nature, and the idea of doing something a little bit rebellious and something that I knew nothing about but could potentially be a game changer in some ways, that was really exciting. So I wanted to fill my own kete, I guess, with knowledge and connection. How does this work with that? Are you back, Hobbies?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, Grace said the opportunity came at the right time, but about halfway through her LSD trial, she suffered a burnout from 80-hour work weeks. I think people were like, oh, how can you be burnt out? Well, obviously, the LSD or whatever isn't working. It would be weird if a microdose. Oh, shoot. It would be weird. Oh, well, how did it go? Would be weird. Where did it go? Oh, if LSD could stave or off burnout, like you wouldn't want to take something that was that potent. Well, she says in the documentary, it's possible that drugs helped her not completely go down serious a mood. Like Myra Swami, who is leading the University of Auckland study, advises caution not to ascribe any gains or losses to the drugs alone. Since the filming, Gray has tried different ketamine formulations in a clinical setting, which have helped her make sense of past experiences, feelings, and thoughts. But it's not something that I would want to do long term. I am really excited about the future of psychedelic therapy in general. I really do feel like there's a place for it, and it's something that personally I'd like to explore more at a later time. Mind Menders premieres on Sky Open on Sunday, June 8th at 8:30 p.m. That was a nice article. I like that one. That's
Yeah, I like when people like broadcasters or news personnel or stars come out and actually talk about how this has helped them. Because us general commoners, our voices aren't as loud as those who are followed by mass public, right? So them getting the awareness out there that, hey, I suffer from this, but I did this, and look at me now, right? Makes a big difference in the public opinion aspect of things.
It does, and it's so awesome. Just as awesome as medication time.
That's right, folks. It's time to pay some bills. So stay tuned for a word from some of our sponsors, and then we'll return with more articles Bufo has chosen making mainstream media news.
Back in 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Networks.
Hey, hi, my name is John Mark, aka Sublimator Warrior, and I would like to welcome you to Smoke Signal in Tyndinaga.
One dab make your whole dome drip sweat. One dab make the homies all dip set. One dab, only really need one dab. One dab.
Smoke Signal is a medical dispensary where you can get all your products and needs.
Start vaping a whole bunch. Might just start laying up the blunts. God. Ooey, ooey, gooey, that's a sticky dab. Sticky dab. Might just have to put this one on Instagram. Go and hold it in, feel it in your ribs.
So come and check us out in Tyndinaga. 55 Highway 49 in Tyndinaga. It's on the res, and we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Are you a Northern Ontario resident searching for credible information on cannabis as a medicine? No Sir is here to help. Established in 2013, Northern Ontario Cannabis Education and Resources is here for you. No Sir Director Kim Cooper brings you 45 plus years experience utilizing cannabis as a medicine, and she is spreading that education across the North. Activism, referrals, resources, and more at No Sir. Don't be a jackass. Say no, sir, to propaganda with No Sir. Find them at www.nocer.ca.
Advertising space available at NOK. Contact us for a rate sheet at NOKNetwork.com.
Dudes and dudettes, enjoy the show, man.
And we're back from our medication session live on Psychedelic Reporters here on NOK Network.
And we have another set of stories coming at you from the realm of psychedelic medicine. So let's get at it. I'm really enjoying this next article, and it's off of MirageNews.com, and they state new gold standard for psychedelic, or new gold standard guidelines for psychedelic trials at University of Exeter.
Yeah, a new set of guidelines for the use of psychedelics in clinical trials, including factors such as music, lighting, and cultural safety, aims to become the gold standard. The international study, led by researchers at the University of Exeter, McGill University, and Imperial College London, highlights the significance of context in psychedelic research and the need to standardize its reporting to benefit both scientific rigor and therapeutic potential. The team has created the reporting of setting in psychedelic clinical trials guidelines published in Nature Medicine for reporting mindset and surroundings when psychedelics are used as part of a clinical trial. The final checklist includes 30 items covering aspects from the physical environment of dosing sessions to participant experiences in psychedelic clinical trial settings. The checklist represents the first global agreement on which psychosocial factors have the greatest impact on psychedelic experience. The overall aim for the guidelines is to become the standard in the field and encourage the reporting of contextual factors in future studies. Dr. Leor Roseman of the University of Exeter is co-senior author and said, psychedelics are not inherently therapeutic, but interact with the set and setting in which they are taken to create therapeutic experiences. Psychedelics can be viewed as standalone therapies without considering the context, which creates challenges in regulating psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy.
Having clear guidelines for this interaction is therefore essential to understand the effects of psychedelics and how they work differently from other psychiatric medications. Our guidelines will also help in replicating results and understanding the true therapeutic potential of psychedelics and offer a gold standard for psychedelic research. Many psychedelic clinical trials are widely acknowledged to be flawed by the failure to properly account for how a person's mindset and surroundings influence the effects of the drug. This gap has led to inconsistent study results, making regulatory approval for psychedelics such as MDMA and psilocybin more difficult. To address this flaw, researchers have developed guidelines through a Delphi consensus study involving 89 experts from 17 and 50 institutions regarding research, clinicians, and past trial participants. The approach challenged the way the psychedelics were scientists to eliminate various to isolate drug effects. We just read that. These guidelines recognize the context crucial and should be studied directly by offering a standard framework for evaluating and reporting these variables. Guidelines aim to make trial outcomes more consistent and comparable across studies. The consistency is needed for scientists to fully understand how psychedelics work and can ensure treatments are safe and comfortable for patients. Wow.
Yeah. Lead author Chloe Pronovos Morgan, a researcher at McGill University and Imperial College London, said, "For decades, we've known psychedelics don't work in isolation. The person's mindset, the therapy room, even the music playing all influences outcome. Two trials using the same drug at the same dose can produce completely different results depending on the environment." Co-senior author Kyle Greenway, assistant professor in McGill's Division of Social and Transcultural Psychiatry and psychiatrist at the General Hospital, said, "There's immense public interest in psychedelic therapies, particularly for individuals suffering from debilitating mental health conditions like PTSD, depression, and anxiety, which have not responded to existing treatment. Our guidelines offer a new gold standard for psychedelic research, helping bring these treatments to those who need them most. The reporting of setting in psychedelic trials guideline, an international Delphi consensus study, is published in Nature Medicine. This research was supported by the Imperial College London Societal Engagement Seed Fund."
Okay, sorry about that. Was that the end of it, or
That's the end of it. That's the end of it.
All right. So it's kind of nice because now we talked about it earlier. Now, like, people are already started talking about that in their programs, and I mean, how quickly this shit is going to be moving along as we get the system going.
Mm-hmm.
And so our fifth article comes from openaccessgovernment.org, and they talk about how psilocybin and IBS treatment first study psychedelic study in gastroenterology, and that was on June 5th, 2025, in a groundbreaking. First, psilocybin is entering gastrology. Dr. Aaron Money leads a pioneering study to explain how psychedelic therapy could transform treatment for millions suffering from treatment-resistant irritable bowel syndrome, offering new hope for gut-brain disorders. This is from Dr. Aaron Money.
Yeah, this is an interesting article. Dr. Aaron Mauney, an assistant professor of pediatrics at Tufts University with a research appointment at Massachusetts General Hospital, is leading the first ever clinical trial exploring the effects of psilocybin on treatment-resistant irritable bowel syndrome. Her pioneering work, detailed in the comprehensive Genomic Press interview published today, addresses a critical unmet need for patients who find themselves with no relief from conventional therapies. Breaking ground in gut-brain medicine, psilocybin and IBS. Dr. Maui's innovative research delves into how psilocybin modulates interoception, the intricate way individuals perceive their own bodies, and gastrointestinal sensations. The study protocol integrates 2 doses of psilocybin with pre and post dosing therapy sessions, coupled with fMRI neuroimaging to meticulously track brain changes. I became very interested in the applicability of this emerging field of psychedelic-assisted medicine to patients who seem to be at war with their bodies, Dr. Mauni explained in the interview. Her approach is rooted in the understanding that many patients experience severe, unexplained physical symptoms, often have a history of significant trauma, particularly early in life. This insight drives her investigation into how early life trauma becomes somatically encoded within the body, leading her to explore whether psychedelic therapy can facilitate emotional release and functional improvement.
From personal curiosity to professional innovation, Dr. Maudling's journey into psychedelic research was sparked during the pandemic, fueled by reading Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, as she solidified her specialization in pediatric gastroenterology. Her background is a compelling blend of bacteriology research, including work on immune tolerance-inducing bacteria and clinical expertise in interactive gastroenterology. A pivotal moment came from when she didn't secure her first choice fellowship. Instead, she matched at Massachusetts General Hospital, a serendipitous turn that granted her access to crucial mentors like Dr. Franklin King at the Center for Neuroscience of Psychedelics and Dr. Brad Kuhl at the Center for Neurointestinal Health. These connections have proved instrumental in establishing her pioneering psychedelic research program, Healing the Mind-Body Divide. Beyond treating IBS, Dr. Mauni's study aims to bridge what she calls the schism between mind and body that many physicians practice within. This artificial separation has long hampered effective treatment for functional gastrointestinal disorder, where psychological and physical symptoms are deeply intertwined. Her research methodology combines quantitative measures such as patient-reported abdominal pain scores with rich qualitative patient reflections and objective neural imaging data. The multifaceted approach seeks to capture both the subjective experience of healing and measurable biological change, potentially setting a new standard for studying other functional disorders where traditional treatments fall short. Wow.
Yeah, implications for pediatric medicine and beyond. While Dr. Maui's current research focuses on adult patients, her pediatric background profoundly shapes her perspective. Witnessing daily inequality and injustices, particularly concerning childhood obesity, fuels her broader vision for medicine. She emphasizes that preventing pediatric obesity requires a full-scale realignment of our society's priorities, encompassing food subsidies, urban planning, educational strategies, and the impact of technology on children. This systematic thinking prompts vital questions. How might early trauma-informed intervention prevent chronic functional disorders? And what role could psychedelic therapy eventually play in addressing treatment-resistant conditions across the lifespan? Dr. Mauni's deep personal philosophy centered on restoring humanity to the practice of medicine permeates her research design, which treats patients as whole individuals rather than mere collections of symptoms. Her approach signals a potential paradigm shift in how we conceptualize and treat functional disorders, moving beyond symptom suppression to addressing underlying causes, including psychological trauma. Looking towards scalable solutions, ultimately, Dr. Maui's research is driven by a desire to not just prove efficacy, but to develop scalable therapeutic options. She envisions optimizing psychedelic therapy protocols to make them widely accessible in clinical settings, offering a beacon of hope to the millions of IBS sufferers worldwide who have exhausted conventional treatment avenues. As psychedelic medicine continues to gain mainstream acceptance, Dr. Maui's work positions gastroenterology at the forefront of this emerging therapeutic revolution. That's very cool because that's a really hard condition to treat. My oldest actually suffers with it and has since early high school. And it is debilitating for a lot of people. And there's no real medications. They can give you some like antidepressants and some like, supplements, but nothing ever worked other than diet, exercise, and mind over matter, I guess, in a lot of cases for people. So, and that doesn't get rid of the condition. It just helps you to manage it.
Right. No, I get it.
Yeah.
So my sound thing, can you cover for a minute while I leave and come out again? I can't hear you guys. People keep calling and messing up the sound.
Well, tell them to stop. Yeah. All right. We'll move on to the next article while we're waiting for hobbies. And this is our last article, and it comes to us from ynetnews.com. DMT emerges as promising tool in treatment-resistant depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Once known mainly for its role in shamanic rituals, the psychedelic compound is gaining scientific attention for its potential. Early clinical trials show promise, though risks and legal barriers remain significant. And this was written by Dr. Roy Zucker. The powerful psychedelic substance known as DMT is gaining attention for its potential to treat post-traumatic stress disorder and treatment-resistant depression, even as health experts warn of its significant risks and illegal status in Israel. DMT is a short-acting hallucinogen found in certain plants and possibly trace amounts in the human body. When inhaled, it takes stupid fucking pop-ups. It takes effect within seconds, often inducing intense visual hallucinations, feeling of ego dissolution, and for some users, encounters with unknown entities. The experience typically lasts between 5 to 20 minutes, but is frequently described as feeling much longer.
You want to go again? I can't find it.
Yeah. DMT is best known as the active ingredient in ayahuasca, a traditional Amazonian brew used in indigenous shamanic rituals. In recent years, its interest in its therapeutic potential has expanded globally, including in clinical settings.
Pharmacology, DMT acts primarily on 5-HT2A serotonin receptors, which influence the sensory, emotional, cognitive processes. It triggers rapid change in brain activity, especially in the visual cortex, creating what researchers describe as an altered state of consciousness. Recent studies suggest the compound may promote neuroplasticity or the formation of new neural connections. That finding has prompted research in its possible uses of mental health care, including for depression that does not respond to standard treatments, PTSD, and recovery from brain injuries. One of the most closely watched trials, known as BPL-003, uses a synthetic version of 5-MeO-DMT delivered in a via nasal spray. In a phase 2 trial, single 10 milligram dose produced a rapid for depressive response in 55% of participants within a day. By day 29, 55% were in remission. By day 85, 45% remain in remission. A large phase 2B trial involving 196 participants is currently underway, with results expected in the coming months. Despite the promise of health experts emphasizing the drug risk, DMT can raise heart and blood pressure and cause nausea, vomiting, disorientation, and anxiety. It may worsen conditions such as tinnitus or dissociation. Individuals with a history of psychosis or complex psychiatric conditions are at a heightened risk of adverse effects. Mixing DMT with medications such as MRIs or MAOIs can be especially dangerous due to the potential for serotonin syndrome, a life-threatening condition. DMT is classified as an illegal drug in Israel. Possession or use can result in criminal charges. Wow.
Yeah, experts stress the importance of setting the user's mental state and the environment in which the drug is taken, which significantly influences the experience. Those choosing to experiment with DMT, despite its legal status, are advised to take precautions, verifying the substance's source, using a calm setting with a sober, supportive companion, avoid drinking alcohol and psychiatric medications, and starting with low doses. DMT is not a recreational substance, say researchers and clinicians. It's considered a powerful tool that can lead to deep psychological insights, but also significant emotional upheaval. Its growing use highlights the fine line between healing and harm, a line that demands preparation, support, and scientific scrutiny.
Wow, eh?
Yeah. Another good article.
Man, it is. And man, I'm so thankful because we get all these different like the views, the opinions, everybody, and it's like this week was almost like all like brought in and like harmonized together.
Yeah. Just some really good ones this week.
Yep, sirree, and that brings us to the end. And thank you for joining us here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network and for tuning in to our video podcast on NOK Network's Rumbles and YouTube pages, as well as social media sites.
That's right, folks. We hope you've enjoyed your update today on mainstream media coverage of psychedelic medicine advancements from around the globe.
Many thanks to our sponsors and to my joint hosts, Terrace Simpson and to Bufo Alvarius, for choosing the stories, and to you, our listeners, for joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday. Let's hear from Dead Ringer again from Kirkland Lake on our way out.
Woo-hoo-hoo! Reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see